Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Brandon and Ruby. And today we are talking about the two most popular muscle group goals, and that's we want to grow our booty and we want to see some amazing definition and tone and abs in our midsection. But the way that many of you may be going about it is kind of tangled up in the misinformation that's out there, but also just the diet culture that has been thrown at us. And to be honest, if you look at someone that has a really defined, that's like the combination of the word toned and defined, toned and defined midsection, it looks like they did that from dieting. It looks like they did that from chasing less, weighing less, cutting out carbs. Well, yeah, I did that too. And it led to me doing a shit ton of exercise, eating very little, and feeling absolutely depleted, absolutely unsustainable. Or now it's more a process of I can hold a tighter midsection. I can hold some semblance of definition if I gain more body fat, which is going to happen as I start to get out of the this phase right now to grow more muscle. Then it might fade a little. But the thing is, the body fat to muscle ratio is completely changed now. And it comes with time, and it comes with time building muscle. But above all, many people don't realize just how genetic abs are. And talking about asses and glutes and asses, they're both the same thing, but they're genetic too. And one thing that comes with this, I will actually caveat, is the body fat, where people naturally store their body fat and lose it from first. If you look at some of the Brazilians as an example, or anyone of that sort of culture, they have a lot more body fat stored in their glutes. And I was actually having a conversation with Adam about this too, where it's like, well, there's like nothing there. There's like nothing hard there, but it looks like that they have a huge ass. And that's because so many women store most of their fat in their glutes, whereas some others store it in other areas of their body and they just have pancake asses, so that the only thing that will come of that butt is if they build it through muscle. However, the answer to both is we need to build. We need to build muscle. We need to get strong. And it's not by doing, let's get strong at ab exercises. Yeah, we do need to put in some form of ab exercise there, but where you want to start is not targeting the abs directly like that. It's we need to build first a strong foundation of strength, and we need to get progressively better at that. Learn how to actually use your core, engage your glutes, use your core, use your glutes, and load them effectively. And then we can add in those more typical core patterns. And it's not by doing hundreds of crunches, it's by building muscle the way the muscle is built, which is you want to load it within a rep range where you are getting close to muscle failure, which could be cable crunches. Although I would say you wouldn't want to start there because so many people don't do these ab exercises correctly, just like so many people don't do glute exercises correctly. And that's why we are so adamant on this. And we've spoken about this on the last podcasts, which we need to get the stability. We need to get the mobility. We need to get the bracing, the technique. We need to know where the big toe comes into this, where the adductor comes into this. And just like Brandon said before I clicked record, if we can get the bones stacked in the right places, there is a lot less thinking needed to then execute the movement. Just like anything else, the setup is where it all happens. If you get the setup right, there is less thinking about the movement pattern. It is not just moving a weight from A to B. It is what are the muscles that I need to feel? If you can't connect to them, which you won't be able to until you develop the skill to, because it's a skill, then pinch yourself, squeeze yourself, get a little needle and just prick yourself, and you'll start to be able to tune into that area, because that's when it's like, okay, I can feel this area. I'm going to try to put all my focus into my adductors as an example. and really, really feel that area. And then I'm going to press into that area. And now I feel my glutes. All these little things come together like puzzle pieces to get you there. But yeah, so misconceptions around abs and ass. It's something that many women prize. What do you have to say about that?
I have several notes here. Um, I think one of the things that I want to start on is the setup is the rep. You said this earlier that this, if you can get the setup right, uh, the setup is the rep. I think a lot of people get in, they don't spend a lot of time on their setup, and then they go through a series of motions. But if you can get the setup right, the reps are generally gonna go a lot better. I tend to think of this as like all of most of our exercises are just a series of positions. And if you can get those positions right, the transition between them generally will take care of itself. I think another one that you touched on here was the kind of that mind muscle connection and trying to make a connection there. And I think that's one too. I've noticed over time that it took me a while to develop a mind muscle connection with some things until after they actually started growing. I feel like maybe sometimes you have to grow a little bit of the muscle first, just getting some of the basics down. And that's where like, we talked about different levels, right? That's where maybe level one is you just start getting the movement and trying to practice quality of the movement before you think about mind muscle. Maybe first, I'm just going to think about getting the bones in the right position, making it look athletic first. And if I can get that position right, get set up right, over time, the muscle will grow enough that I can make a connection to it. It's when I think about like rehab, I went through some pretty severe spinal injuries and lost the feeling in my right leg. And it took a long time to reconnect with things like my big toe and my right leg in general. But it was one of those things where it's kind of, you have to come at it from both angles. I have to just work it, and then I also have to try and feel it later. But I found that as it got stronger, it was a lot easier to reconnect with it. And I think that same concept may apply here. A couple other things here that
Hey,
I wrote down.
on that stronger note, why I don't know how you started off with training, but I don't know if you noticed that a lot of people tend to specialize in the minors when they start out instead of just getting overall foundationally strong.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you think of a big a big slab of concrete, you don't just start chiseling out with one of those little chisel knives to get the detail in. You get like a big stone cutter and you start to take off big slabs before you try to do the refinement. And I think that's where a lot of people also go wrong with let's do biceps here, and here, and delts here, and here, and triceps here, and here, and get this particular angle. It's like, no, let's just do a shit ton of the basic foundational compound lifts. Once
Yeah.
you're foundationally strong, then we can like focus more on the accessories, because the accessories are going to take a hit when you're doing
Well, they are by definition accessories, right? Think of the definition of the word. They're accessories. They're supportive. They're there as like the last 10%. I call it mowing the lawn while the house is on fire. And some people get so granular. They're out there trimming each individual blade of grass with a pair of scissors while their house is burning to the ground. And it's like, I remember there was this, I don't know, there was an Instagram trend a while back where everyone was really focused on the iliac fibers of the lats for some reason. And everyone that was highly focused on it looked like they only trained the iliac fibers of their lats, because I didn't see any muscle on those physiques. But if you go back and you look, especially pre-steroid era bodybuilders, like they did the basics. And they probably didn't even think a lot about mind muscle until they got more advanced. But they did the big basics. Does that mean you need to take a big barbell and press it overhead? No, we have safe basics that can suit your body. That's why you get a good coach to find what your basics are. But people tend to approach this, and I think this probably came out of a lot of the muscle magazines in the area that I came up in were always like, oh, this is that bodybuilder's routine, and then you look into it and it's like, no, it actually isn't. It's what they think that bodybuilder's routine would be. It's what the guy sitting at his computer writing thought the routine might actually be. When you go look at the real routines and watch them train, like there are a lot of big compound lifts and a little bit of accessory. The biggest, and I know women don't want to get big and bulky, but the reality is muscle doesn't make women bulky, cupcakes do. So like if you train like you're trying to look like a Ronnie Coleman or like a Jay Cutler, you're probably going to look like the Athena that you want to look like, the Greek goddess. You know, you're going to build. You have to train as if you're trying to get massive. All you have to do to not look like them is don't take the drugs they took, don't have the genetics they have. That's about it. You're good. You know?
Yeah, a lot of women are really scared that their legs are going to get bulky, though. It's like, I don't want to do training that's going to get my legs bulky. But
it won't be the training.
That's the thing. If you naturally store a lot of fat there, and this is where that whole I want to grow my glutes or I want my glutes to be shapely comes in as well. They're never going ever to look the way you want them to look.
No. If muscle defines the shape. You know, you can have size and that'll be your calorie intake, right? And size can come from body fat or muscle, but those two things look very different.
Don't forget glycogen and don't forget water, and that's what a lot of people miss out on. Sure.
But like I want them bigger. Well, do you want them bigger or do you want them shapelier? Because if you grow your glutes, odds are they're probably going to get, at first at least, a little bit smaller, but a lot shapelier, and then over time you'll get a little bit more size. But you're never going to get that big, massive leg. Like I said, you're not going to find a routine that makes your legs blow up huge, but you will find that nightly glass of wine and the cupcakes and the chocolate and the ice cream, the just one bite here, the just one nibble there, like those things add up and they will make your legs look not how you want them to.
Can we talk about what actually does make them bulky though? Because like I mentioned just then, the glycogen in the water, I don't think a lot of people realize that you are going to have legs that feel bigger than usual.
They will feel bigger.
Yeah, because you're training them as starters. So it's going to feel like they're heavier, especially as you get into it. But if you are untrained, and by untrained, I mean you exercise a lot, but you're undertrained, and then you go to properly trained, you're going to have a lot more glycogen storage capacity. So your legs are going to increase by a little bit in terms of water. Not every bit of weight and thing that you feel is either fat or muscle, because muscle does not grow that far.
There's intramuscular fat, intramuscular swelling, glycogen, water. There's all kinds of stuff to take into account. It's all minor enough that it wouldn't be that you wouldn't worry about it, because the second you look in the mirror, you're like, yeah, they're a little bit bigger, but they're a lot prettier.
But you're not going to see that. You're not going to see that if you haven't done the mental work, because you don't see yourself like you are. And if you feel like you're bulky and your legs say a different picture, what do you think is going to come out as the reality? The pretty legs or you're bulky, you're fat, you need to slash this, slash that? Well, maybe the latter, because you're making yourself believe it so. And that's exactly why women struggle with legs more than any other muscle group, because they're so attached to their pants, their jeans. And it's also the biggest muscle group on your body. So what do you expect is going to happen?
Yeah, and this is where you start to get into the mind game. I actually had this conversation with a client the other day. We were talking about, and you and I were talking about it before the record, about how we are, significantly more geared and sensitive to negativity. So we have this huge negativity bias. I recently read, I think it was like 7-1, but I've also, I was corrected and told that it's actually much higher than that. But we are at minimum, I know that we're 7 times more sensitive to negativity than positivity. So when we look in the mirror, we're going to focus in on the things we don't like. And you magnify what you focus on, even if only in your mind. But then over time, your habits will respond to what you're focusing on in your mind and magnify it in real life. And this is why I always come back and say, like, your body is the reflection of your internal environment. And it doesn't lie. It tells me what you're focused on. It tells me what you're thinking about. It tells me what's on your mind to some degree. And so if you get in the mirror, if you get in front of the mirror and you look and you're only focused on what you don't like in your body, it doesn't matter. You may hit that goal that you had set for yourself 20 years ago. You may get that ideal Athenian body and still look in the mirror and not be happy, because you're going to magnify what you focus on. If you're just looking at the negatives,
they're going to get the results from getting to that outcome, and by just chasing an outcome. And if stop being friggin' stubborn. I'm just going to say it out straight. Stop. Because if you're not going to realize that the process is the goal, you're going to keep fucking yourself over, because you don't just pick yourself up as a little yellow man on Google Maps and plop yourself to a destination and all of a sudden you're so happy with everything. Like, no, because your mindset dictates everything. You become in the process. The process changes you. And it's a process that also builds character. But the thing is,
the process changes you and your body follows.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Sorry.
No, that's the thing. The process changes you, and it's who you are that dictates everything else. And your body is a reflection of who you fundamentally believe yourself to be. Because no matter what it is, you're going to fall to your baseline default settings, and they are bullshit right now, because you believe whatever you have believed that got you to a place where now you fundamentally want to change whatever it is. So obviously, whatever this is needs to change so that you start thinking like the person who XYZs. And then if perimenopause comes into this, that throws a whole spanner at the works, because now you have all the moodiness and all that other crap that comes with it. If you haven't yet built the body and built the habits already, it's going to be even harder for you to do that. So the worst thing that you can do is shame yourself even more, because you can't just force a diet in perimenopause. It's the hardest time to force a diet. Like even staying steady is so much progress in itself in this period of time. And this is why who you become in the process and this mindset stuff is so important, because if you haven't changed that and you enter perimenopause, good luck with the rest of your life, because you're just going to make it worse by forcing the same approach. Because now you probably, in trying to shrink or in trying to undo whatever it is, made things worse, because you're making it harder to stick to the plan. You're binge eating more, your sleeping is even worse, etc. You're losing more muscle mass more than anything else. So that's why this is important. And this is exactly why the next thing that I want to throw to you is a huge thing that I hear is, I really want to build muscle and I want to grow my glutes, but every single time I try, it always goes to my gut. And this is where the abs and the ass thing comes in. And then there's the popular meme of, I don't know whether I want to get abs or an ass. And it's kind of around the so
I would say you can have both, just maybe not necessarily at the same time on the way to getting both. You can have both eventually if you take the right approach. We've talked about building muscle in here, and growing your glutes is the same as any other muscle. Building your abs, same as any other muscle. Of course, revealing those two things, that comes down to nutrition. But you have to build it before you can reveal it. And that's where it's like, okay, as we've mentioned before, okay, we've talked about the things that you're struggling with. We've talked about the things that don't work. Let's get into the stuff that does. Building those things will require basic training, like compound lifts, your basic compound lifts. Accessory work shouldn't make up more than 10 to 20% of your training. Don't worry about the mind-muscle connection until you've got a good handle on the basics. And then, yes, dial in that mind-muscle connection hard. But don't train yourself like Frankenstein's monster. You weren't built one piece at a time. If you ever get a chance to look at a cadaver, I encourage it, because you will see that the muscles do not look how they look in a textbook. It's one big piece, and that's how they function. And form follows function.
Wait,
if
let's go back to that function part just before you move on to that one, because you just mentioned basic compounds. And I know that we spoke about this already. To have a really strong deadlift, you're going to need to have your core engaged. You're going to need to have your glutes able to function the way they should be functioning, which means your adductors need to be able to function properly, which means your lats need to be able to function properly. And your lats are part of your core, your whole, that whole ability to brace your lats, to brace your core, to get your glutes doing what they need to do is what is going to build the abs and the ass. And the same can be said for a squat. The same can be said for a bent over barbell row, where you're actually keeping your back parallel and not letting it travel upwards, because that's a sign of a really weak core and an inability to hinge. And also the sign of maybe we need to get some mobility happening around the hips, because if you have someone who moves really well and who is really strong, it is very difficult to be able to not see some amazing shape on them, because if they're moving fundamentally well in the fundamentals and they're really strong, you know that there is a physique there. If there's extra body fat and it's like, well, I don't want to get bulky like them. Well, there's a really good physique under the fat suit that was not done by weights. It was done by eating in excess of calories, and they probably just don't give a shit about that stuff, which is like a lot of powerlifters, because they just want to lift the maximum they can lift without even giving a shit about their body weight. But you can do both. And that's what I tried to prove when I did my powerlifting. I wanted to show that I had power to weight ratio, because you can get strong. And like right now, I'm trying to get really strong without gaining a bunch of body fat, but I do want to build muscle. And in order to build muscle, I need to see the scale go up. But the difference is that I've been lifting for a really long period of time. So I'm only really realistically aiming for 0.5 kilogram of growth in a month versus back then when I started, it was more so like, okay, I'm going to get 0.5 kilogram of growth every 2 weeks because I had the potential for that. And yes, if you're going to try to just not get any fat gain whatsoever and you want to stay lean while you're building muscle, good luck building muscle too, unless you already have a lot of body fat. But if you're skinny fat, then that isn't for you. And that just reminded me of what I wanted to say, because you said both at the same time, and there's also the time component to it and doing the fundamentals.
Yeah.
The thing that holds most people back is impatience. Impatience at just pushing into the growth aspect because
I want it now.
And if you're not going to put that time into practicing the reps, into doing the basic things over and over to get stronger, how can you expect to have the glutes there? How can you expect to have the abs there? Because you want to shred for every summer. Every time you do that, you're putting muscle building on hold, possibly losing muscle if you diet the typical way. Like, what are you complaining about? The fact that you're impatient, or like, said in the most kindest way, of course, but it's just like you're sick of your shit. That's why you're trying to figure this out. So it's almost like, what have I been doing before?
I think this falls into, this comes down into like an ambivalent place. And this is a thing that a lot of people struggle with in behavior change, is they want to do the thing, but there is always an ambivalence. Even in addiction recovery, there is an ambivalence about recovery. There is a huge identity aspect, which we hit on earlier. And I don't know if we were recording yet, but we'll come back around to that. You want to identify as the person who is a lifter, who shows up. But there is an ambivalence there. Do I want abs or do I want ass? And which one do I want first? And that's kind of the thing where it's like, at some point, you may need someone to help talk you through that ambivalence so that you can select what's more important to you in the long term. And there's no right or wrong answer there, but you do have to pick what's most important to you 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
The right
and
or wrong.
most people,
The right
the right or wrong is, I would say there's no right or wrong in terms of like what you want is what you want. I can't tell you you're wrong. But if you're telling me that you want abs and ass, the way that you want to go about it and what you want first might be the wrong way to get either one of those two things.
Yeah,
so that's where you might want some guidance, because you're going to go through some terrain that is new to you. It will be uncomfortable because you're going to have to navigate through weight gain. You're just going to have to before you can reveal those abs
and bigger pants.
And you're going to, if you want, you can either pick to get the body you want or to keep the wardrobe you have. But most of the time, you can't pick both. If you want to see a big difference in the mirror, then you're also going to see a big difference in your wardrobe. So you do have to start.
I need to say something. If you're watching this, I need to say this right now while we're talking about this. You want to grow a butt here. You do realize that this takes up space. This is what you want to grow. Do you think that these shorts are going to fit over this tush over here? No. Do you think that my old shorts fit over this tush that I have now? Well, you can kind of see here that I have an ass hanging out of it. That's because they fit down here before, and now I have a bigger butt. So they like scrunch themselves up. And that is something that you need to be okay with without making it mean something about you. But that is one thing that we struggle with as women. We make it all about us. There is something about us. There is something that is triggering us about it. Oh no, we're going to be unidealistic to the opposite sex, and my husband's not going to want to touch me. And oh my God, he's going to grab my fat and think that no.
I think a lot of this too is like it's repeated to women all the time that the scale is what's important. Ironically, not repeated by any women who are actually in the shape they want to be in. But I don't know where this originated. I don't know. I don't know. But I know that it's repeated frequently to women, and that they should look at the scale more, and that's what matters, and that pant size matters. But we leave a lot of context out. How do you look at that weight? I've always told clients you want to, A, be on a diet where you're eating as much as possible while still seeing the change you want, even if you're in a deficit, and B, weigh as much as possible while still looking how you want. If the scale goes up, and you look better, you just did the thing. You got what you wanted. I've never been on a beach, looked at someone, thought, oh, they're attractive, and then found out what they weighed and thought, never mind. That doesn't make any sense. Like,
Never mind, you
nobody
wait.
cares.
No, I want your
Yeah.
body. I don't want to weigh that much. Like, no,
Yeah.
thanks. Like, what?
Now that I know what you weigh, you look terrible. Like, nobody's ever said that before.
And you're
I
not
often like to.
that body that you want. You don't even know her weight. You
It
want her.
usually weighs a lot more. Every time I pull up a picture of, like a physique athlete, somebody who's like sickly lean, and I tell them, okay, here's how tall she is. Guess her weight. They're almost always like 10, 20 pounds off, 5, 10 kilos ish off,
It's actually, that's quite funny. I had this conversation with 3 other people that weigh about the same as me, but they're taller than me. And that's kind of the thing. Like, they do not have as much muscle mass as I have, but there's a lot more of them because they are much taller than me. And that's the difference with muscle. And then I have a couple of clients that weigh less than me. And you would think that they would weigh more than me because of the muscle fat ratio. And that's the thing. Like, muscle and fat, it's about the ratio to each, and muscle weighs something. And I've been lifting for such a long period of time that I have that base muscle mass there. And if I compare where I am now to my leanest in the past, I'm probably like 6 kilos more, because my leanest in the past, when I was on stage lean, I was only like, I was 6 kilos less. And then before I started training, I was about the same. And then I gained weight, and then I lost weight, and then I gained weight. And that's the thing. Like, if you keep trying to hold yourself to one particular scale weight, how do you expect your body composition to change? And I don't believe in bulking and cutting, but I do believe in, you need to eat enough for long enough. And you do need to push yourself into a slight surplus. And that is not the same as bulking and cutting. It is the same as you need to eat as much as necessary for you to perform at your best, to be able to get the muscle to then rebuild bigger, which means it needs extra tools. And if you do it the right way, this is where I was getting at. If you do it the right way, you're not going to gain a shit ton of body fat, which is what Brandon was talking about before. It's eating a shit ton of cupcakes, which was his analogy.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you still need to eat slightly more. And if you do it the right way, this shit takes way longer than you realize.
Yeah.
And if
you will still gain a little bit of body fat.
Yeah, you will still gain a little bit of body fat. It is impossible to not gain a little bit of body fat with muscle, because they come hand in hand.
And the goal is to get in that sweet spot where you don't gain so much that when you cut it off, you have to then sacrifice the muscle you built, because you gained so much body fat that cutting costs you that muscle. You want to gain.
That's the point I'm getting at, and that takes a long period of time. So cutting for every summer is stopping this from happening. If you want to do the bulk and gain a bunch of fat so you can gain some muscle and then do your summer shred, go for it. But that's not going to work long term. That's why you're unhappy. That's why you think that building doesn't work for you and you get bulky. But if you want to do it the lean build way, you need to take at least that 2-year period. 3 years if you want to be able to do it once and for all and not need to worry about it again. That's what I did. But now I'm just unhappy with my muscle mass and I want to gain more. So I'm going to be doing it. I'm kind of doing it.
Yeah, more years. So we were talking about, we started with, here's what doesn't work. Here's the mindset holding you back. Here are the things you want to avoid. And then we started on what works, and then we kind of went off on a tangent. But I want to come back to, okay, what does it take? What works? So I wrote down a little list of 5 things in order that you want to acquire in terms of the basic application. Here's what specifically I need to do in my workouts to grow abs and ass. So it has to start with basic mobility in the right joints. Don't go stretching your spine, go stretching your hips. You need flexion, pulling your knee up this way. You need extension. So like the hip flexor stretch, I love the wall quad stretch, or the couch stretch, I think is what a lot of people call it. Hip separation, the world's greatest stretch, Spider-Man stretch, whatever you want to call it. You need abduction, so like the splits done that way, or any kind of adductor stretch there. You need internal rotation and external rotation at the hip. Those come from there's the 90-90 hip internal external rotation stretch. Love those stretches. Yeah, love those. Lifting alone can get you some. It cannot get you all of these. It can get you like hamstring length, but that's not necessarily what most people need. A lot of people who can't touch
Wait,
their toes.
for the hamstring length thing, I want to quickly put a caveat into this. One thing you need to keep in mind is what is your whole body doing, not just stretching that muscle, because you can pretend you're stretching your hamstrings,
Yeah.
but your back is all sorts of rounded. This is where
Yeah, we're going to come back to that.
because I think it's really important to be able to realize that what your pelvis is doing is the most important thing. And if you're wearing runners, that's the first mistake you're making. Take those off so you can actually feel into the ground, because you need to get that big toe working. As soon
Yeah.
as you get that foot working, then you're able to stabilize so much more. And until your pelvis is stable, your glutes aren't going to work, your hamstrings aren't going to work, and your quads are going to be all sorts of bung up tight.
And yes, that's something that's actually on my list here. So like in terms of, can I just use lifting to get more mobility? To some degree, yes, but to the degree that you're going to really want in terms of the hips and the shoulders, probably not. Some people have enough, some people don't, but I would address those things first and make sure that they feel good. Next, you need basic spinal control, and that's what Ruby was just talking about, is you want to be able to define and determine, am I in extension, flexion? Am I in neutral? What is neutral? Neutral is a range, by the way. It's not a single position. But something like a cat-cow would go a very long way to help develop spinal awareness. And that can be progressed up to segmental cat-cow, where you're not just doing this with the spine, but you're rather thinking of it in segments and trying to move it one vertebra at a time. Doing that.
I like the Jefferson curl for that.
I wouldn't start there, though. I would start with cat-cow. I don't like loading a Jefferson curl for most
I'm
people.
talking about body weight Jefferson curl.
Yeah. And that can work. Granted, you have to bear in mind my demographic, we work with a lot of low back injuries. So the Jefferson curl is kind of on our do not do list for a lot of them. And we found ways that we like a lot better. Basic unloaded quadruped cat-cow is a really great place to start. And then for some, a Jefferson curl can work. For others, it can trigger things. So, but a little cat-cow goes a long way there. And then after that, you've established, okay, I know what extension versus flexion is, and I know where my neutral is. Okay. Then we start learning how to hinge, because that's the foundation of your big booty lifts, is a good hinge.
I want to mention a star favorite that kind of works with the hinge as well as with getting you to control your torso a lot more. And this is so you don't become a kookaburra bird pecker, like the video I sent you. Sitting on a bench in a straddle-ish position and doing a seated good morning, because many people don't have control over their spine and they end up rounding over versus getting nice and tight into the bar and then pushing their belly button into their crotch while keeping an extended spine, which teaches the hinge really well while you're sitting down, but it also gets you to feel into your adductors because you need to keep the knees out.
Yeah, and there are a lot of ways to teach that hinge. We have several tools that we use that vary depending on shoulder mobility, which again, we come back to mobility. If you have poor shoulder mobility, some of our hinge drills, some of the most effective hinge drills that we have, we can't use. So that's where you focus on your shoulder mobility, but that's a different conversation from today. One of my favorite
version of it, even.
You can. I would do that. Again, that comes third in the list. So first in the list is basic hip mobility, especially spinal control. And then we start practicing the hinge. And there are a lot of great tools there. And I do love the goblet tool after you've established that spinal control. Because if you don't have spinal control, I've given that goblet drill to people and they've done this. Or I've given the good morning to people and they've done something else entirely. And I love taking a dowel and holding it here and maintaining contact with your head, your upper back, and your tailbone as you hinge. Think about trying to touch your butt to the wall behind you without losing contact with any one of those 3 points. If your shoulder mobility is lacking there, it's not going to be very easy and you may have to pick a different one. But hey, that's where a good coach can really help you.
So cat-cow, dowel, next.
So next we've got, all right, mobility, spinal control and awareness, motor control, and then hinging. Then we can start working on bracing because we want to load that hinge. right? So we can start practicing our deadlifts and good mornings without a brace, but we're not going to get very far before we're going to start to feel that in a bad way. So that's where you want to start working on the bracing. And now, in my
And
experience,
the benefit of this is the abs. The benefit of this is if you get really good at the bracing, you're going to learn how to control your core, and that is essential for building abs, building that tight midsection that actually holds itself without you eating jack shit all and doing jack shit everything.
yeah, and this is the very cool part about this is once you establish this bracing technique, it carries over and tends to help you build abs without a whole lot of actual direct ab work. Not that we're going to say none. I wouldn't say that. But you don't need you don't need an ab day. I've had people who come in and they're like, yeah, I do abs on this day. I'm like, so you spend 2 minutes in the gym? Because that's all I do for my abs is 2 minutes a day at each, at 2 workouts a week. All right, maybe 5 minutes, but you get the idea. The brace will help you learn the skills you need to strengthen your abs. So in my experience, good movement skills come from two root places. And Ruby's already mentioned one of them, which is the foot. The big toe, the foot up, and the diaphragm out. So this is where I might, depending on where you are in how you breathe, if you find that you're constantly tight up here, I would advise you to look up PRI breathing with a balloon and learn how to do that and learn how to do good diaphragmatic breathing. I especially love teaching people to breathe in child pose because it's the easiest pose to start learning breathing in. And why are we talking about breathing? Because we're talking about bracing, and bracing isn't rectus abdominis. It's not your six pack. It's your entire torso. And you have to look at your torso like an
Breathing
unopened.
also isn't holding your breath. It's also not breathing into your chest. It's also not just thinking nose breathing. Like, breathing requires you to go deep. It requires you. I wanted to say, I try to also get my ladies to focus on their obliques as much as possible, because I don't think a lot of people think about their obliques in the way that it is essential for crunching down. Because if you only think about crunching down, that does all sorts of weird shit to your back. But if you think about crunching down in like a 360, you don't even need to think 360 because you already naturally think the front of you when you crunch down. But if you think crunch down with your obliques, that gets your lats down as well. So if you're getting your lats and your obliques down, now you've got this nice tight core. But also, just because you have a tight core, you still don't want to shallow breathe. I used to think of breathing into my lower back, which helped quite a lot because it kind of made me need to breathe
For that one, to get that breath in, what I'll do is I'll put people in kind of a modified child pose. Child pose exactly is, I want more flexion than that. So I'm going to put them on knees and elbows and say, put your elbows against your knees and sit all the way back. So your back is kind of rounded. Because it's, again, the easiest position to learn in. And then I'll put my hands right there at the bottom of their ribs and tell them to breathe in, like first exhale past the point of discomfort, and then through your nose, breathe into my hands and expand, breathing into your kidneys. And I really like that. So spend a couple of weeks, not minutes, weeks practicing that style of breath. And then I have a couple of cues that I use as a starting point. This isn't the end point. This isn't it. But a couple of cues that I'll use as a starting point, and I'll go over those here in a second. But we want to think of the core not as this just rigid piece. Rather, it's more like a tire. It's actually more like an unopened beer can, right? If I take a can and I open it, I can then crush it pretty easily. If I leave it unopened, it's pressurized. It's a pressurized cylinder. And that means the top, the diaphragm, the bottom, the pelvic floor, and everything around it, obliques, rectus abdominis, transverse abdominis, your spinal erectors, all of these things have to be kicking. All of the muscles of the trunk have to be kicking along with it. The lats, even the pecs a bit, the glutes some, all of these things, adductors, they need to play in tandem with each other. So a couple of cues that I use to get all of these engaged is I want to think, stand up here. There's a laser on your sternum. We're going to point the laser straight forward and get as tall as we can. In other words, I don't want you to do that, and I don't want you to do that. So keeping the laser pointed forward, I'm going to start you with a big exhale, and then what you'll see, the belt buckle pulls up toward the belly button. This gives us a little posterior tilt. So exhale, see that movement. From there, we inhale down here, just like we practice in child pose. There's the air, and then we'll push down. So when I'm teaching a deadlift or something like it, I always tell them everything is down. We're not lifting a weight. We're pushing down, because then you'll feel, okay, you feel your lats, your pecs, you feel your lats kick on. I think take this part of your armpit and push it down and try to get the bar as close to, or your hands as close to your knees as possible without bending down. Because a lot of people, if we're keeping that sternum forward, we don't want to push down like that, right? We also don't want to do this. A lot of people do this thinking that's a straight back. That's not what we want. So push down.
Oh,
there's our breath.
Just because you
and
mentioned
then
that,
we can go to work.
You mentioned the back thing, because no. Just before, did you see how Brandon? I wanted to touch on you doing the back thing while you were standing, but it's okay. Where Brandon pull your shoulder blades back, set your shoulder blades back. That is a mistake that I see a lot of women make. If you're watching the video on this, which you'll see on Spotify anyway, a lot of women make the mistake of when we say engage the lats or engage the back or
not here.
Brace. There's a lot of pulling
down.
back. And what that does is that can either set you into too much of a hyperextension, or it can lead to you actually rounding your back now, because there are no lats engaged there. Your lats don't go back, they go down. And something, because Adam's doing a lot of posing at the moment. I don't think I've mentioned his name on the podcast before, so everyone's going to be like, what? But anyway, Adam's doing a lot of posing. And he was first taught a cue of like getting his shoulder blades backwards to try to get his lats engaged before he does his back lat pose. And then when I went to his last posing session with him, because I was watching him get taught and stuff, they changed it to like actually pressing downwards. And that is the movement of the lats. It's not down and forward. It's getting them down and then being able to take them out. And then for one of his transitions, he needs to throw a fireball. And if you just throw a fireball, there's no lats there. But if you think about, one of my cues is, the reason this is so important is because this is what's going to get you to get your brace. And without getting this brace, there's no glutes, there's no abs. So I'm not going off on a tangent here if you're wondering why I'm saying this. One thing, I trained with his son yesterday, and he was trying to get his pull-ups, like the chin-ups. And he was doing like stuff that wasn't getting his lats engaged, and he was feeling his arms and everything. So my cue was, think about your elbow. You want to draw a J shape, and you want to get your chest up to your bar like that. So if you think about drawing a J, that is getting a protraction, which is your lats, and it's bringing it down and into your side, which is your lats. But if you do that without thinking about keeping your chest up, you're also going to get your shoulders routing over, which you don't want. So you want to think elbows forward and down while keeping your chest proud, and that gets your lats engaged. And then if you put your hands down and do the same thing, you're thinking down, and you want to brace it that way, because now you're getting your armpit engaged, because that's just the bottom movement of it. You're not doing this part, but you're doing that part. Now, ooh, I can see muscles working. Now you're getting, I'll do it this way then. Now you're getting lats turned on, but you don't want this extension. You want exactly what Brandon said. But the thing is, if you do this and then try to stay braced, I can't get lats.
You can't.
You just
and a couple of things that are happening right there. You have your ribs and your pelvis. So we talked about the core as a pressurized cylinder. When you go into extension like that, you've broken the cylinder and you've opened it up here, and you're going to lose. That's a pressure leak. When you have a pressure leak, you're going to have an enormous energy leak and a strength loss and a potential risk for injury.
And abs, no glutes.
Yeah. And so here's where a lot of people, when you teach them the right way to brace, they often feel like they're rounded, but you're not. It's just not as extended as you think. There it is. It looks a little bit round at the top, but this is it. You don't want to look like this, because if you look like this, we've got our energy leak. If you go watch a lot of videos, and you go watch people in person who deadlift, 700-800 pounds, and not that we're shooting for that, but it's important to study the top, because if it works there, it's definitely going to work down here around the 200-pound, 300-400 pound mark, right? The techniques that get us up there.
Watch normal people doing it, and you'll notice that they're doing this, and that's why they're having issues.
And that's where it's like, okay, surround yourself with the people you want to become. and focus on what you want to accomplish in terms of your form. So look at the people who are very, very strong. Look at an 800-pound deadlift. There's a little bit of rounding here. It doesn't look super extended. It's not gonna. But those lats are on. That's the correct way to deadlift. You will never see an 800-pound deadlift that looks like that.
We need to talk about this. We need to talk about this. No, we need to talk about this. So we're going to have to talk about the spine now, because people try to keep their spine way too straight, way too neutral. And was something I had a client.
Well, extended, I think, is where they tend to go. Yeah, that's actually a worse injury than flexed.
But the thing is, because the way that they see it is, I want to keep the spine. They don't see it as extended. They see it as, I want to keep the spine straight. I had a client ask me about why I was rounding my shoulders forward when I was showing a demonstration, because she thought she needed to bring her shoulders back like this when she was starting the RDL. I'm like, no, what you want to do is actually make your arms long, because my cue was, we want to make your arms long and forward and get the crunch down with your shoulder blades. I'm not rounding, put the hair onto the other side. I'm not rounding over. What I'm doing is down in front. That's not a round over. It's arms in front, and I'm still going down here like that, but I'm not rounding over. See how I just made my elbows travel forwards instead of backwards? My elbows are still back-ish, but I'm thinking down. And if you don't think down, then you're going to do the thing like this, where you're extended, and then you're going to come up like this. And that isn't what we want. We want down, nice and braced, and then going like this. But that's still where the feet need to come in, because the feet are going to make sure that all of this is tight. And like, this is exactly why, when you mentioned, I want to quickly go back to that part, because I wanted to interrupt you back then. When you mentioned right or wrong with the whole abs and ass, you're never going to get either of them if you think that your right answer is, I want to get abs first and then we'll worry about the ass, because that's what I tried to do. That's why I looked like a little small version of me, and I was tiny. Like, I wasn't skinny fat, because I was also in my 20s. It's different when you enter your 40s, as an example, and you have more hormonal stuff going on. It makes it more difficult, because it's not that fat loss is hard, so you're going to store more fat. It's the fact that muscle building is hard. Building muscle is really for as hard as you age. Fat loss is just as easy. It's just that it's not as easy if you have a lifestyle that stops you from being as active as you were in your 20s.
Yeah. And as you get older, that lifestyle tends to slow down a bit.
Yeah.
To be clear, I probably should clarify this. When I said there's no wrong answer, I was referring to in terms of what you want that last outcome to be. Like, if you want to be skinny fat, like, all right, I guess that's your jam. Like, cool. I don't think anybody listening to this podcast is. I think our listeners are probably the type who are after the ads and ass. So there's one answer there, and that's the one we're going to cater to in terms of the approach. If you want skinny fat, you probably need to talk to a different coach, because we're not into that. So, but yeah, so the coming back to like the simple cues, here's your 10-second overview on how to start practicing your brace. This is it's a very long journey to get good at this, so you need to be patient with this, but here's where you can start. 1, practice your breathing in child pose before you work out. Do your mobility drills, do your little cat-cow, and get some spinal awareness. And then, okay, to brace, we're going to stand here. We're going to draw the belt buckle up into the belly button. We're going to push down, and then we're going to breathe down and into the kidneys. And that's it. That's what I want you to practice. Take this part of your armpit, push it down. That's it. So there's your basic bracing 101. Is there a lot more we can go into? Yes, and we did go into some of it. But this is your starting point skill to practice.
And the thing is, I really want to say, the more that we keep thinking that every single nuance in food and dieting, and we need to get leaner and we need to lose body fat, like, yeah, I'm not saying we don't need to lose body fat and we don't need to get leaner. We can definitely still have those things going on in the background, but most of your focus should be on getting as strong as possible, on mastering movements, on getting technical efficiency in these things, because you're never going to get the abs. You're never going to get the glutes without it, because all of that is muscle, which is what I was trying to say with, yeah, you can get whatever outcome you want, and what you want isn't right or wrong, but the way that you think you need to get there is right or wrong, because chasing skinny not even skinny, but chasing abs isn't going to get you abs, because what are abs? Number one, it's muscle. But number two, you don't just target the ab muscle and get ab muscle. The foundation, unless you truly want to live on minimal food. But the thing is, that's not going to serve you that long. I know someone who did that amazingly. She didn't give a shit about, well, she did, but her life quality, to me, I know that she didn't have a really good life quality. It's just that she cared about what absolutely everything everybody said about her, and she thought that she was undateable if she gained any body fat. But the thing is, now she's in perimenopause. Holy shit, her body blew up with so much body fat, because now she isn't able to control her food the same way. Her sleep is shit. She has like no muscle on her. She just overdid that particular stuff, living on 1,400 calories for the majority of her life. This is why it matters. You aren't just doing this now to be the skinniest version of yourself. You need to think of the future, because then what's going to happen? This whole muscle is what is going to create the whole physique that you want. Athena is like that Greek goddess look that you want, comes with way more muscle than you realize, way more strength than you realize, and way more food than you realize. And if you keep staying scared of calories, like, you're not even giving yourself the brain capacity to be able to push yourself through the sessions long enough either.
Which actually segues nicely into my fifth point. So we address mobility. We make sure we have adequate range of motion. We address motor control and basic spinal positioning and awareness. We address basic hinging mechanics and get really good at getting your hips further and further behind your feet. And we address bracing, which is the diaphragm out and the feet up. And the next piece of the brace is grabbing the ground, and we can get into that. We've already kind of, I feel like, covered that. So the fifth and final piece of that, you've got all these skills built up, is neural drive. How it's pushing more weight. It's learning to maintain those things and producing enough force to threaten the muscle with death, because that's basically the only way you're going to convince it needs to grow. It says, oh crap, I can't handle this. I need to grow a little bit more next time, especially when you're doing it consistently. Your body says, this is happening a lot, and it seems to be happening with more weight every week. So I need to grow more muscle so that I can continue to survive the coming sessions. That consistency is enormous, and none of this matters if you're not consistent. So this fifth and final point is neural drive, and there are a lot of points in there, but I think there's a story that I'd rather tell about a powerlifter who went to train with Louis Simmons, which, if you're not familiar with, you can just Google him. He's one of the greats. And he was really excited because he was going to try to set, I think it was 100-pound PR on his deadlift. I think he was going to shoot for 700 or 800 pounds. And so he's getting ready to step up to the bar. Then Louis walks over to him, and he is like, all right, here he comes. I'm going to get the great wisdom now. This is Louis Simmons, And Louis comes over and he says, all right, if the bar doesn't move, pull harder. And then he just walks away. And it's like, he's mad. He's pissed. He's like, that's it? That's all? Like, come on. Okay, whatever. He steps up to the bar. He attempts his lift. He misses it. He goes and sits back down, and he thinks for a minute. And he's like, well, could I have pulled harder? I guess so. Yeah, I could have.
You know what's funny? That was my cue when I was powerlifting as well. Yeah. He's like, it's when you get to the sticking point, just pull harder and do not let that bar stop moving as soon as that bar, that's where. And the
end. Well, real quick. The end of that story. I want to get to the end of that story real quick, and then we can tangent off. The end of that story, he steps up to the bar. He tries it again, and I want to mention again, this is a 100-pound PR over his previous PR, like his previous best. This is 100 pounds more. He got the lift. So sometimes the cue isn't about lats on or grab the ground or grit your teeth and push your tongue into the roof of your mouth, though all of those things will increase neural drive. Sometimes the cue is just fucking go.
You need to No, I actually think the two things, because that actually touches on to the non-tangent, because I was going to say a bioemotion stays in motion, but the thing is, you need to believe it possible for it to happen. If you don't think you can do it, you're not going to do it.
And that is all neural drive. And neural drive, we've got these great big engines called muscles, but they're kind of electric engines, and the electricity, the battery, comes from up here. So the things that you tell yourself, there are interesting studies done. And I want to say this was in one of Sean Akers' books. It may have been a couple of various sources of his books, but it's shown up in a lot of other places as well. So one of the tests, they take they do a grip test, and they establish a baseline level of strength, and then they say, okay, name something you're not good at. Oh, well, I'm not good at whatever. And then they retest, and they're like 30% weaker. And then, okay, another day, come in, establish a baseline. Hey, tell me about something you are good at. Oh, well, I'm good at cooking. And then they redo the grip test. And it's like 10 to 15% stronger than the baseline. So, all right, there is now a range of almost 50% where you can choose to be weaker or stronger. When you go into a lift, the things that you want to be saying to yourself are reminders of what you've done well, how far you've come. No, maybe you're not deadlifting 300 pounds yet. Maybe you're still on an empty bar and you're learning. But if you remind yourself how far you've come, if you remind yourself, hey, I did get 1% better today, and that right there is the game, by the way. You're not going to make quantum leaps. It's going to be a slow just like the muscle gaining process will be slow. The skill acquisition process, the neural drive process, all of this together, it's a slow process. It's just like, developmental, it's like childhood. You don't start in kindergarten and land in 12th grade in a week. You don't start in kindergarten and graduate with your master's or your PhD in a week. That takes a literal lifetime.
And if you keep programs, you're not going to get there
either. If you keep changing schools and the schools are teaching something different, you're definitely not going to get very far. So to carry that analogy a little bit further. So what does work? Let's focus on what should we be doing? We should be patient. We should be focused on skill acquisition, especially within compound lifts. Does that mean everybody?
Specific stuff, because don't go studying freaking algebra when there's no algebra in the test. It's a bloody English test.
And that comes back to having a neutral third party look at you and tell you these movements are going to be the ones that best suit you is incredibly helpful. Does that mean I'm saying
what not to worry about? Because, like, for example, I had a client ask me about vacuums, and it's almost like, okay, but we're missing the forest for the trees. We have these fundamental things we need to focus on that I like for the outcome, fat loss, as an example, or getting leaner or losing belly fat. Vacuums aren't going to do it. It's stopping you from focusing on the stuff that social media makes you think you need to focus on.
Don't worry about those iliac fibers of your lat. Don't worry about if you're firing those.
The main thing is to focus on less of the other stuff, because you already probably have some semblance of an okay plan. Then you need a third party to make that plan more aligned to where you want to go, so you can actually move along the spectrum. But the thing is, the thing that will make the biggest difference isn't so much of the moving along as it is the stopping you focusing on dumb shit and all the extra crap that social media makes you think is the way, because then the third party can come in to allow you to move forward without you second guessing absolutely everything, because social media makes it so easy for you to second guess everything.
Yeah, one of the first pieces of advice I give every client is do a social media fast. Like do a fitness media fast. If somebody said something about fitness, just forget it. Pick your one source, which should be your coach, and stick to it. And if after that it doesn't work, okay, pick a different coach. But if it's working, don't go messing with the recipe. Like, the recipe works, so keep doing it. It's going to keep working. So I want to come back to what I am saying versus what I'm not saying, because we've been talking about a lot about deadlifts and things. And does that mean I think everybody should do a barbell deadlift? Absolutely not. Everybody should do a version of a loaded hinge. That, yes, that's like a primary pattern that we have. But that doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to be doing the exact same version of that hinge. So that again is where a good coach can really come in handy and save you a lot of heartache as you try to discover what doesn't work for you. Um, what it does mean is to focus on movements that are compound, preferably free weight over machine. Machine would fit into the accessory category for my personal tastes and preferences because I want things that carry over. And we've talked about how, somebody with a very good barbell squat, which again, I'm not saying everybody should have. The vast majority of my clients do not back squat. They squat, but they don't back squat with a barbell.
So I would say the first
Um,
step is to meet yourself where you're at as well. But you already said this,
yes,
like stop skipping the steps. And I think that is
yes,
the fundamental piece that's going to weave into all of this, because it's very hard to know where you're at when you keep thinking, well, social media keeps making you thinking that you
I
should be.
should be doing this. Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's the less patient you are with that process. And actually, no, I will keep having this as the greatest setback for every single person. And this is something I'm going to be absolute about. Stop fucking dismissing your wins. It irks me. Like, you are doing better than you realize.
Yes.
It's almost like, yeah, well, I don't want to celebrate my wins because I fall off anyway. I'm like, well, it's that very attitude that is keeping you falling off, because you won't celebrate your wins, number one. And number two, you get down on yourself the second that you fall off, or you think there's something inherently wrong with you, or you think this is, see, I've told myself this. You exactly said this before with the whole, like, what you believe to be
You
true.
magnify what you focus on.
And if you keep shaming that, if you don't then stop, because just saying, oh, it's okay, I'll start again tomorrow and I'll make sure I keep going, it's going to still keep happening and you're still going to keep falling off, because you're not allowing
But
yourself to slow down and ask yourself, why is it that I was falling off? How can I do better next time? How can I learn from this? There is no such thing as failure. It's all data. Use it as data. Stop judging yourself. It
yeah,
just, one of
I
my,
often
celebrate yourself.
I often use the analogy of, if a baby takes his first steps and falls on his butt, do you say that wasn't good enough, he fell? Or do you like jump up and down and say, yeah, you took your first steps? That's motor learning in action. And all skill acquisition is the same. You cannot progress without mistakes. Every mistake is a success because it's a lesson you learned. Time spent whittling away at your content is a success because it's time spent learning and figuring out what to use versus what not to use. Time spent figuring out what food didn't work. And okay, I didn't navigate this social event as well as I'd hoped. One, was it better? If so, how? What did you do? And how did you navigate those challenges? Let's double down on that. But two, like, okay, great. What did you learn? How can you prepare for that next time? Okay, let's take those two things. But if you do focus on your wins, you're going to notice more of them, because you can either, and I want everybody to do this very silly exercise with me right now. I want everybody to look at the ceiling for 10 seconds. It probably won't be 10 seconds, but I want you to look at it. And while you're looking at the ceiling, I want you to try to see what the floor looks like under your feet. Now everybody look at the floor and tell me what you see on the ceiling to your right, about 3 feet. You can't, because you're focused on one thing, not the other. You can't see both at the same time. If you're focused on the things that didn't go well, you're going to miss the things that did and be unable to build on them. However, if you are focused on the things that are going well, you will be able to build on them and make them grow. The key point here is, whatever you're looking at, that's the plant that you're watering and feeding. And so it's the plant that's going to grow. If you look in the mirror and you think, okay, what do I like about what I'm seeing right now? Here's this thing that I think looks good or looks better than it used to. All right, you're watering that, you're feeding that, it's going to grow, it's going to get better. Keep focusing on the things that went well, the habits, the training wins, the nutritional wins. Keep focusing on these little changes that are going well, and they will continue to go well. Don't worry about it if oh, I missed a day, I fell off, I messed up, I messed up the whole plan. No, you didn't. You learned. You learned. It's often said in meditation that failing to meditate is successfully meditating. Because when you remind yourself to come back, you have successfully been focused enough to, you were successful in focusing and bringing your focus back to where you intended it to be, on the breath or on whatever it was you chose. So, okay, my mind wandered and I brought myself back. That bringing yourself back was successful meditation. The distraction was the thing that helped you successfully meditate. So, all of this fits in. Focus on the little wins and they'll get bigger. Don't worry about the little mistakes. Focus on what went well and it'll get better. I often find when I'm coaching clients in person, especially, I'll look at them doing a new exercise. And of course, it doesn't look great. But if it looks a little bit better than last time, I'll tell them it looked better because I saw this. Like, hey, your back was a little bit straighter, or your knees were in a better position here. Your shoulders were in a better position. They were more retracted or more protracted, whatever it was we're looking for. You had a better, your shoulders were packed better here. Your breath was better. And what I find every single time, the next set, that's even better than it was the previous set because now they're thinking about it and they double down on that. And often what happens is the same thing that happens in your garden. Rather than pulling weeds, if you feed the plants you want to grow, they will choke the weeds out. So if you focus on the things that are going well, they will choke out the things that are not. And you will find a lot of auto correction happening. So there's my little ranted diatribe for the day on focusing on the positives to continue your positive progress.
I think that is so much better than us focusing on every single nuance that we hate about our bodies as well.
Yes.
And this is exactly what you guys know this already. This is what I'm all about. Focusing on what actually excites you. What is exciting about looking in the mirror and pinching your belly fat all the time and wanting to just shrink that? What is exciting about wanting to just shred for summer because you don't like how you look in your bikini, or you don't want to let your pants go this way because my husband's going to think this about me and then he's going to just no, like, who are you doing this for? Number one, if you keep trying to please other people, or if you keep trying to live in the past and try to fix where you are now, you're still living in the past because your future demands what you're going to focus on next. And if you can think on things that excite you, like improving your deadlifts, improving your RDLs, improving anything, that is going to keep you in the game a whole lot more. And you'll realize that what you were chasing from diets, you got in the process of building your best body, of building your reps up, your strength up. And in that process, your body feels like it's $1 million and you have more energy than ever before because you're not focusing on shit that shrinks you.
Yeah, and that's something I actually wanted to bring up too, is a lot of my clients are in their 60s and 70s. And every single one of them, they come in like, hey, I want to lose some weight. And then 5 years later, I'm talking to them and they're like, I started out with the idea of I wanted to lose weight, but now I'm so much stronger and I've learned that that's so much more important to me. I can get up and down off the ground and play with my grandkids. I can get out in the street and play with my grandkids. I can throw the football with my grandson again. I had a client who couldn't throw the ball because of a messed up shoulder, and that got better. And it's like, hey, those things are way more important than an inch off the waist. But what you'll find is as you build them and then you start tightening down your diet just to be healthier, like all these conversations we have, most of them are not about let me get my abs. They're like, hey, how can I eat a little bit more healthfully while I'm doing this? And we do those things and it's like, hey, their body is recomping in front of my very eyes. They are losing body fat. They are gaining muscle. They are getting stronger. They're feeling better. And that right there is the game, because you're probably not going to care about your abs nearly as much in your 70s as you are about not breaking a hip.
And you know what? Actually, how good does it feel to have your kids say they want to be like you?
Oh, yeah. There's no better feeling.
There we go.
Yeah.
Like, imagine that your kids wanting to grow up to be like you, like be the example, be the role model, because you can be the role model like my mom was for me, stepping on the scales, which led to my eating disorder. Or you can be the role model like this guy over here that has all their kids wanting to be like him. So that's your choice. You can dictate what the next future generations will be like. You can change the game now. You can stop the generational curse of skinny Kate Moss.
Yeah, on the kids thing, like they don't learn what you tell them, they learn what you show them. They will learn by your example, not by the do as I say, not as I do thing does not work and it never plays out. They will do as you do.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope.
So where do you want them to focus? Do you want them to focus on their little losses or on all their little wins?
Mm-hmm.
You want them to have a good life. This is a total slight tangent, but it makes me laugh, and this conversation of focusing on the wins reminds me of it. Is I saw this joke. It was if you don't find farts funny, then I feel bad for you because you're just going to go through the life through life with the exact same number of farts, but a lot less happiness.
Yeah, and if in doubt, just buy yourself a whoopee cushion, and you'll start to laugh at your own farts. And
More farts with all the protein.
there we go.
Right, no joke.
Exactly. So, like, stop taking life so seriously. We only get. No one gets out of life alive. Come on.
Yeah.
So
At one point.
I'm
not going to say it. Oh, I was just going to say at one point, the game is just slow the decline because nobody has figured out how to live forever yet. So if you think with that in mind, you'll probably end up having the body you want anyway, that you just want to make it last as long as possible.
And you want to enjoy life. So if you're not allowing yourself to experience it all because you just want to chase this dangling carrot, then what exactly are you doing? You're not enjoying anything. So I hope
you're going through life with no joy and the exact same number of farts.
And if you want to make more farts, just eat more protein. But I would also say that doesn't always lead to more farts because
maybe smellier ones.
Yeah, probably
some of the fiber.
Well, yeah. So
cauliflower. And on that note,
if you guys enjoyed this podcast, I hope you give it a 5 fart rating, 5 fart rating, and or a 10 fart rating, because we'll get more farts to you on the next podcast. We did talk about us today, and we did talk about abs, and I hope you got some abs from those laughs as well. But regardless, on the next podcast, we will be talking about a lot more on the things that aren't spoken about on social media, so you can stop focusing on the bullocks and start focusing on the shit that actually makes you excited about living your best life and shit like that. Again, any final remarks, Mr. Fartstar?
I think be patient, focus on the tiny wins. Again, it is, and I've said this, I think probably every episode, it is 1% at a time, not 10% per day. Like, it takes time. The time will pass anyway. You might as well use that time to practice. Skipping steps always just sets you back to where you started. So you can either let the time pass and miss it, or you can enjoy the process as the time passes and then reap the benefits later. Yeah,
a little by little, a little becomes a lot. But without the littles, you can't have the lots. And you'll hear us in the next
The pixels make the picture.